note is that it ends victoriously, which is exactly kind of what I want to talk about today. Last year, I brought up a question from BCAT. Let's do that again. Because it's always fun, biblical knowledge and whatnot. I don't even know what reference the verse is, which just shows my biblical knowledge, but the three things that remain are faith, hope. Awesome. You guys did so much better than the junior hires. They're like, because do they even take the BCAT? They're babies. But it was like, it starts with an F and it rhymes with name. Yeah. Anyway, so good job, A+ today. So faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is, but I want to talk about hope today. Love is really awesome. It's great. It's the greatest thing of all. Whatever. And then we know a bunch about faith, like we all love Jesus, faith in Jesus. Yeah. But then there's hope, which is a word we kind of throw around a lot, and we hear it a lot in songs, and it's pretty cool. Whatever. But we don't really talk about it. So I looked up the definition of hope, and it's actually really cool. It says to wish for something with the expectation of fulfillment. So just keep that in mind, trap that in the back of your brain, we'll come back to that later. So God grants hope in hopeless situations, but we don't always see that when we're in the midst of it. We're really focused on what's happening in the present, and we don't see the hope. And then everyone around us is like, everything happens for a reason, and then we just want to punch them in the throat. Because that's not what you want to hear when you're in the middle of some crisis. And today I don't want to talk about stuff that's our fault or anything like that, because that's messy and it's weird. I want to talk about the things that are not our fault, that happen to us out of nowhere. It is dropped in our laps, and we don't know what to do with it. And we just question, why? Why did this happen to me? Why would God let this happen? Why do bad things happen to good people? Which is really a hard question to answer a lot of the time. So I found a passage from John 16 through 22. And I'm going to share that with you. It says, Jesus went on to say, in a little while you will see me no more, and then after a little while you will see me. At this, some of his disciples said to one another, what does he mean by saying, in a little while you will see me no more, and then after a little while you will see me, and because I'm going to the Father? They kept asking, what does he mean by a little while? We don't understand what he's saying. Jesus saw that they wanted to ask him about this, so he said to them, are you asking one another what I mean when I said, in a little while you will see me no more, and then after a little while you will see me? Very truly I tell you, you will weep and mourn while the world rejoices. You will grieve, but your grief will turn to joy. A woman giving birth to a child has pain because her time has come. But when her baby is born, she forgets the anguish because of her joy that a child is born into the world. So with you, now is your time of grief, that I will see you again, and you will rejoice, and no one will take away your joy. That last part's super awesome, but the beginning part of it is what? I don't understand. That's what I think when I read the Bible. So let's break it down a little bit. This is right before Jesus is about to die. Spoiler alert, he raises from the dead. So he's talking to his disciples, gives them a heads up. Hey gang, I'm leaving for a little bit. Chill out, don't cry, BRB. And then his disciples are like, what? And then he's like, do I need to say it slower? BRB. And so then his disciples are like, I still don't get it. He's like, just forget it. You'll see it on the web. I don't know why the disciples are always like 6th grade girls in my head. Like most characters are in the Bible. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm glad you all know that. So then he gets all awesome. You will weep and mourn while the world rejoices. Which is true. The disciples are obviously not happy when their teacher and best friend is crucified while the rest of the world is throwing a huge party. And then he goes on to say, you will grieve, but your grief will turn to joy. And the disciples are like, I don't know what that means! So then he's like, all right, fine, I'll give you an example. So he talks about this pregnant woman. And from what I've heard about labor and from girls' freshman health, which is terrifying, labor, I hear, is not so pleasant. So I'm told. Am I right on that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because you all know. Yeah. It happens. I was hoping the teachers would be like, yeah, it's horrible. All right. Thank you, Miss Knott. All right. So basically, labor sucks. And it's usually not a time when the woman is thinking, this is so great. I am so glad this is happening. This will produce a huge blessing. It's more along the lines of, why did this happen? Where are my drugs? Give me an epidural. Why did you do this to me? You will never get to watch SportsCenter again. But then, out of nowhere, and several hours later, a child is born. And mom was holding the baby, and the baby's all clean because the nurse cleaned him up. And daddy gets to watch SportsCenter, which is great. It's a happy ending. And it's really awesome. And she's not thinking about the anguish she just had to go through. She's thinking, I am holding a human being in my hands that is really cool. And that's interesting. But, and that's something I had never thought about before, the anguish that turns into joy in the pregnant situation. But usually with our anguish, we're not like having a constant reminder right here that's like, life is going to suck for a few hours and then it'll be really awesome. But that's usually not how anguish works. It's usually very, very different. That's when everybody is saying, everything happens for a reason, punch in the throat. But the thing is, they're right, which I hate to admit because I hate hearing that, but it's true. But the reason, we may not know for a very, very long time. We may never know it, but there is a reason. Last year, I found a summer program to go to before college, a pre-college summer program. For those of you that are children and don't know what that is, it's basically you get to go to college for a few weeks, and it's really cool. So I found this college in the Midwest, and it had my name written all over it. There was even an acapella group with the motto, sometimes sassy, always classy, which is like what I would get tattooed on my forehead, if that was socially acceptable. And so I was like, this is awesome. I'm going here, yeah. So it was for musical theater, because that's what I do. If you didn't know that. Classic me. So, where was I? I'm just talking. Let's go. Okay. So I applied for this musical theater program, and they asked for a video of me acting and singing, and I'm like, sweet, I do both of those things at once sometimes. So I prepared for months, and I had this thing down. I commissioned a bunch of my friends. Colin Fleming and I edited for hours, like, night before, like, let's get this thing done. I prepared for happy days, and it was perfect. And then I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and then I was rejected, and then I cried, and I cried, and I cried, and it was horrible. And I thought, I went through all of this work for nothing. Why did this happen? You know, why would God not want me to follow my dreams? Which is a horrible thing to think about, is that God doesn't want you to follow your dreams. And I was terrified of that. And then it hit me. I was driving home one day back in August, and I had just come home from a different summer program at Emerson Cal in Boston. And and I was driving home, and I thought, life's really awesome right now. How did I get here? And I thought about, if I was never rejected from the first program, I would have never even applied to the second one. And that one changed my life. It was like amazing. I learned so much. It was really, really cool. And I would have never had that if I didn't have that projection. So it wasn't that God didn't want me to follow my dreams. He just didn't want me to be in the Midwest. He wanted me to be in Boston and follow my dreams. So he just shifted me. And that was really cool. I was like, God, you're awesome. This is great. 2 weeks later, my grandpa suffered a massive stroke and died a few days later. The damage that was done to his brain was done in, yeah, it's hilarious. The damage that was done to his brain was done in 90 seconds. Literally no one on earth could have saved him. And so I prayed that a heavenly being would save him. And I prayed and I asked for everyone around me to pray, and I needed a miracle more than anything. And a miracle I did not get. And I was mad. And I was broken, and I was numb. I remember very vividly sitting alone in a closed waiting room, and for the first time in my life, being so angry at God that I actually yelled at him. I cursed his name and I shouted, "Why would you let this happen, God?" Because specifically, the timing was so incredibly ridiculous. Grandpa literally was just a few days away from preaching his first sermon as senior pastor of this new church that he was so excited about. And it was such a blessing to our family because about 8 months prior, he had been basically run out of his old church where he was pastor, and they forced him out of the building, which is not the church love that needs to be. And so we were really angry about that, and I didn't understand why that was happening. But then he found this new church where he loved it there. And we all thought, this is awesome, this is exactly God's plan. That's why he had to leave that old church, is so that he could find these people. And then he died. And we had the memorial service the day he was supposed to preach his first sermon. And that frustrated me, and I didn't know why it was happening, and it was ridiculous. God's timing is just confounding, and I don't understand it. At the memorial service, my uncle, who's a filmmaker, he put together this video of all of us Pryfogles talking about being a Pryfogle and how none of us would be where we are without him. And it was really cool, and all the words that my family was saying were ones that I took to heart. And I kept those words in mind when this fall I was writing all of my college essays, which are so much fun. No, they're not. They're literally like one of the most stressful parts of your life, so look forward to that next year, juniors. I came to this question on my first choice schools. It was the last essay question, and all of them are like super intense on college essays, and they're like questions that are super hard to answer, or you just fake it. And then I came to this question that said, college essays are stressful, so let's write about something fun. It said something along those lines. And it said, if you were to write your autobiography about your life thus far, what would be the title and why? Okay, cool. So it was obviously the nature of it was for all of us to chill out, write about something fun, but I stressed about it for days. I was like, how am I going to write my autobiography? And I suck at titles, meow. Why am I saying meow so much? So then it finally came to me, and I entitled it P as in Paul, because whenever Pryfogle is asked how to spell Pryfogle, which is very, very often, we all said it, P as in Paul, R-Y, F as in Frank, O-G-L-E. Same every time. And I wrote about how we aren't embarrassed by the question. We are proud of the answer. And how proud we are to be Pryfogles. And I wrote about that in a lot of my college essays, but in this one I wrote with the exact words I took from the memorial video. And I got into that college, and I'll be attending Emerson College.